All right, recording is started, and this is the July 28th, almost to the end of July, Crossplane community meeting. So let me add my name here too, because I am here, I am present. All right, so let's jump into recent releases and milestone checkup here since the last community meeting. Obviously, the big news is that we released the version 1.9. So that is out and available for folks. I think it was we were in the middle of this release during the last community meeting. So now this is out there and available. And I think there's probably there's maybe some ongoing work here as well that will potentially end up in patches too. But this release is out there, and I think folks have already upgraded to it. And then that is the big news since the last community meeting. So, after getting the 1.9 release out, obviously the next tier is going to be V1.10. Now it's a release date on that one. Let's talk about that for a bit, because we had some conversations. Let's open this issue here. So we had some conversations over the past, taking a look at this over the past year or so. We've been on typically an 8-week release cycle has been the typical cadence so far. There hasn't been a strong need, and then necessarily like some of the features that are going in to continue at that pace right now. Upstream Kubernetes does not do that pace either. So I think that there is some good reasoning for reducing the pace of the official Crossplane releases to a quarterly release instead of basically 2 months, going to more something like 3 months. So I think that that's probably strikes a good balance between velocity and frequency of the releases, and then you're balancing time to get bigger features in and to get things, to have meaningful releases going out as well. So, that's something that the steering committee did meet together on and go ahead and make a decision to move to a quarterly release. So that is like the latest update on that the decision has been made, but it has not been put necessarily into practice yet. So the release documentation, et cetera, and that talks through our release cycles and dates, et cetera, would need to be updated to reflect that. But I think it probably makes sense to do that as part of this 1.10 effort. So I'm thinking that to just roll this out now and have if you're doing a quarterly 3-month release sort of thing, this would put the release, the 1.10 release for about mid-October, from mid-July to 1.9 to mid-October for 1.10. And that's interestingly does coincide, I think, with the next KubeCon also for KubeCon Detroit. So that's nice to be able to get a release out that will, hopefully have some meaningful things in it right around KubeCon time. Obviously I'm not going to use that as a driver for subsequent releases, but it's nice that potentially the first release on a quarterly cadence does line up that way. Nick, anything else you wanted to add to that, or that all makes sense to you as well for your perspective?
Yeah, that all sounds good.
Cool, man. Okay, so we just dropped 1.9 after in between the last community meetings. So there is not yet a 1.10 project board. I think the roadmap board here is still fairly it reflects fairly well some of the highly demanded or highly sought after features and functionality. Like some of the ones I can think of immediately are, composition functions, or custom compositions, and observe only resources. So those are reflected on the roadmap, and those would be considered for, 1.10 planning as well. But, we just started in the first week of the 1.10 cycle. So I have an action item then to create the 1.10 project board and get that going and start getting some prioritization in there. So folks are more than welcome to add some feedback as we get the 1.10 board going for anything that we might want to consider for prioritization there. Obviously there's going to always be the reality and constraints around engineering resources for folks wanting to or able to take on some of those features. But we're just in the beginning of the 1.10 release, planning sort of stuff. So ideas and suggestions and prioritization desires, et cetera, are open for folks to be contributing to that. So I'll take an action item then to get the 1.10 board up, and we will have that before the next community meeting. Anything for folks to add to core Crossplane and Crossplane runtime planning and 1.10 efforts? Alrighty. Okay, so let's move on down to providers as well. I didn't get a whole bunch of time to fill in stuff here, so we can do, if there's news and updates and et cetera that we want to do on the fly, then we can do that right now. Obviously, one of the biggest things here is that a long-awaited release was put out for provider Jet AWS. So I think a note I want to make on that is that so within the community there, we had a bit of a backlog on some PRs, some contributions, and then that release itself, right? And so we did find some time recently to go ahead and get that release out. But then I know I'm aware of that there's a couple PRs that are desired for being merged and to get taken to the finish line as well. So there is some engineering resources that are becoming available now from the folks at Upbound that had not been available in the recent past. So there will be some more time from folks that are maintainers there to be able to review some things, get some things in that have been blocking the community. So yeah, we should see the velocity pick up a little bit in those areas as folks are becoming more available than they had been. So we can figure out if we want to do another release there when we get some more PRs merged in, but there will be some velocity that hadn't been there in the recent past. Christopher, anything that you can think of, and Bob too, anything and other folks as well, anything you all can think of in the provider world that we want to add here as status updates and things to make note of?
So in provider AWS, so the native one, normally we had a release yesterday, but I had no time, so I will do it tomorrow, I guess, for the next release to cut this and publish the release.
Yeah, I don't have anything on provider Terraform, but on provider Kubernetes, they just merged in some changes to bring it up to the latest Crossplane runtime and add the max reconcile rate support. So now the default, I think, is 10 concurrent reconciliations, which has really helped performance in provider Kubernetes.
Oh, that's great, Bob. That's definitely a good update there for sure. And Christopher, is there already a provider AWS tracking issue for getting the release out?
Yes, we have the issue there.
Cool. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Unless you already know. Oh, here it is. I found it. 1379. All right. So let's just put that for tracking purposes there. And I'm trying to drag Zoom windows out of the way. So you probably just see my mouse moving around and not, but nothing really happening. Thank you, Zoom. Okay, sweet. Any other provider announcements or things to add to your status? All right, well, let's keep moving along then. So, right, so community topics. So in terms of recent content, there was a super interesting live stream this morning between Victor, who is obviously a dev advocate in the Crossplane space. I mean, we've seen him many times. He was teaming up with some of the folks at VMware to do a live stream today and kind of introduce Crossplane and talk about some of the concepts there. So I think that was a really cool experience. And the YouTube link is right here. So if you missed that live stream from just like a couple hours ago, you can follow up on that and check that out as well. I believe Victor it might be right now, or it might have just passed. I wasn't able to attend it, but Victor was also doing, his DevOps toolkit a live stream this morning as well. And then Mauricio Salatino was joining him as well. So I think there's probably interesting conversation there too. And we'll get a link to that as well when we have that one too. A couple other interesting blog posts from folks in the community about essentially two different ones about using Flux for setting up GitOps and provisioning resources and delivering your software with the GitOps approach are both available here. So links are available there. One of them was the CNCF blog one, and then another one was someone's personal blog. So those are available to peruse and learn from. And yeah, folks can check those out. Any other things that folks want to add as new content to this section here, feel free to add it as a suggestion, and I'll go ahead and make sure it gets merged in there, the agenda doc. Let's see if any of our amazing LFX mentorship folks are online today. I don't think they are, and this isn't a super convenient time for them anyway, since it's kind of late at night time for them. But quick updates on both of the mentorship projects for this summer. So we are in, I think we just started week 8 of 12. So we're about 2/3 of the way through the mentorship project term. So the two projects there of Ruhika working on catching breaking changes in CRDs. She has gotten to almost to the finish line for one of her PRs for adding a managed resource to provider GCP for adding DNS policy. And then the next step there is to, in a draft form, purposely introduce some breaking changes to that CRD, not release them, but to have them in that draft form. So then she can start testing and working on her automation logic, like a pull request bot, to detect those breaking changes and then surface those on the PR as well. So that will be probably the remainder of her time over the next month or so in the mentorship program, to be getting the first stage essentially of that PR bot to detect breaking changes in CRDs and add a failed status check and a comments, et cetera, to the PR, so that we can use those across all providers to be very aware as a quality check during our pull requests when we're adding new resources, or sorry, not adding new resources, but updating resources, to making sure be very aware of if there's any breaking changes going in there. So I think that's going to be a really exciting project, and she'll continue making progress on that over the next month. And then Parul has been working on unit tests and integration tests, actually, to make sure that private registry pulls are working. So she has updated a number of the existing end-to-end tests we have around provider updates and Crossplane version updates as well, and adding some diagnostic things into those to kind of help over the long term make sure that those tests are staying healthy. And if they're not, we have the observability information to troubleshoot why. And then she's just getting started kind of on building out the integration test structure for doing doing pull operations of packages that are in private registries. So she's got a month left on that project as well, and that'll be the main focus for her, is delivering the private package testing flow, now that we've gotten to where we are so far with her progress on the other tests so far. Yep. So both those girls are doing awesome work, and we're really happy to have them around the community this summer while they're working there. All right. Next issue here. I think this was on the agenda for last meeting, but I wanted to leave it on there to just get a little bit more awareness on it. Is that Craig is wanting to hear and connect with folks in the Crossplane community about some of the experiences that folks have had and some of the success stories here. And we would want to be sharing these on the Crossplane blog and just kind of getting more of people's experiences, like more exposure to them as part of our Crossplane, ecosystem and community and the, blog, et cetera, that we publish. So if folks want to participate in that, there's a direct link to the discussion on it. So, add some of your experience or your desire to participate in it there, and Craig will reach out to you. I don't think Muafik is here, and I wanted to sync with him on this because I think he might have the most context. But the CNCF has been doing some work to improve the security posture and invest in the security posture of the Crossplane project, and one of those aspects is fuzz testing, We had kicked off that effort over the past couple of months, and it looks like one of the first issues has been found from the testing and the fuzz testing that some of the folks from the CNCF have been adding in. So there's a link here to essentially an out of memory panic that was found from the fuzz testing, and I was hoping to, I guess I don't have a ton of context myself, but I was hoping to get a little context from folks that might know about that to see if if we understand the origin of the root cause of that issue there. So Muafik, I know, did open an issue about it, and he'll be tracking some effort towards a resolution there. So we'll make sure to share some of those results of what the fix is and how we go about it, and then maybe if there's some general lessons here as well from the fuzz testing, and and if there's other patterns that are throughout the code base that would need to be updated as well. But it's exciting to see that we can make some improvements from some of the effort from the CNCF to do some security poking here. So that's exciting, and I'm interested to see what comes out of that. Okay, so we can move on to some other community topics here. So it looks like there's been a couple of things that have been added on as pull requests and discussions. So let's go through these and see what each one of them is. So this is the first one in the list here. So let's click on that. Yeah, Christopher, you want to give us some context on this one?
Yes, this is from our side. So we're seeing, for example, in the provider Jet AWS, that if you're running the provider in debug mode, that the provider is leaking the security credentials from AWS. So you can see access key and secret key is in the debug log at the end. And if you're using static credentials, you have the problem that those log messages will go through your EFK stacks, whatever, and then you leaked your security credentials completely. And yeah, the question is if we can disable this in debug log. I guess it is because in debug log we have the whole main TF file cutted completely, and it's part of it, the security credentials, access key and secret keys. So I guess we need something to fix this.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Christopher. And thanks for bringing that up. And so just to confirm though, this is something that only happens when debug mode is on.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, and so it looks like we just gotta because I know that there is a body of work that understands sensitive fields, right? And stores those appropriately and obfuscates them, or not obfuscates, but what is the right word I'm looking for? Does not print them out to various means of output, right? And so it looks like in this debug thing here, yeah, when we're just kind of throwing out the entire state file there, that it's included there and probably should not be. So yeah, this is something interesting to look in. And I, if you've done some looks already, Christopher, into where this is coming from, or maybe some strategies around approaching it, do feel free to share those as comments, so we can kind of get any sort of your insights you already have into it to kind of better inform any sort of approach over here.
So from the provider perspective, we found nothing that we can disable it if you enable the debug thing. So we at the moment adding an annotation to the pod if we enable debug log, not shipping the logs to our central log instances. It's the only thing we can do at the moment, I guess.
I'm guessing this is built in TerraJet somewhere. Logging the entire Terraform state file seems a little much to me, to be honest, even for debug logs. So I would, as Jared mentioned, we under the hood, this should be using the Zap logger. I'm guessing that's probably got some logic for filtering out sensitive fields. But then because this is a subfield of a giant JSON blob, that's going to be even harder. I would potentially raise on TerraJet just how valuable it is to be logging this entire state file in the debug logs. If we just maybe not do that anymore.
Yeah, there's also other places they could put the credentials where the provider can find it. It doesn't have to be in that provider config. It could be in an environment, or they could put them in a separate file and not dump that file into the logs.
Yeah, I wonder whether this is also being, a lot of the time when we emit a debug log, we also emit an event to the Kubernetes API server. So it would be worth checking whether we're just putting this in events even when debug logging isn't turned on, because that's pretty bad. That means anyone can get events in the API server can get those credentials.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good point, Nick. And yeah, that speaks to understanding the where this is coming from within the runtime. So we could verify is this something that's going to an event also, or is it just, a debug statement that's only going to the logging stream? That's a really good point, Nick. Yeah, so folks in this conversation here, feel free to add a couple these observations as comments to this issue, so we keep that context there and we can follow up there. And but Bob, one thing I was noticing is that when you start speaking, your voice sounds a lot like Aaron Eaton's voice. So until I look and see who's talking, I think that Aaron is talking on this call. That's really funny.
Sorry, I think.
Oh, is that Aaron? No, Aaron's awesome. We love Aaron, so that's not a problem. It's definitely funny. It's playing tricks on my mind. Okay, great. Yeah, so let's get some comments on that so we can continue following up and understanding the scope of that and potential mitigations for it as well. All right, here is another discussion that I don't think I am familiar with this one. So,
yeah, I can add a few words. Context. Yeah, I can add a few words of it. So in our environment, we accidentally create more than 200,000 KMS keys with Crossplane because of a wrong patch. So if you can see, we patching metadata labels. So if you go a little bit up, metadata labels, Crossplane IO claim name to external name. And the issue here is that for KMS keys, AWS decided the external name for the keys. And we patching in every loop from Crossplane to the external name. And then in every loop, a new key was created in our AWS accounts. And accidentally, we create this in many accounts of our organization. And at the end, we come to a Kyverno cluster policy that we disabling for KMS keys, in this case, override the external name if external name already exists on a resource to block something like this. Because as you can imagine, it is cost intensive if you're doing something like this. Creating more than 100,000 keys because every key costs $1. And yes, it's more like that folks are aware of because the default, you can create in an AWS account 100,000 KMS keys.
Oh, that's where the
quota, the default quota.
Yeah, the quota. That's what the quota is. Oh wow.
Yeah.
A useful quota this time. Too bad it wasn't lower. Yeah.
Yes.
So, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, I think someone else I was talking to recently also hit this same issue.
Yeah.
So to help me understand this a little bit better, now is this something that would not happen if the particular resource that's being patched here had a consistent external name, like a predictable, consistent external name that you set and it uses it and that's it?
Yeah, what I think yes, because if AWS in this case decided the external name identifier for their own, it would be better if we cannot override it at the end with the composition. So with patching over it, because
right.
I think there are a few open Crossplane issues regarding this to have something like this. But at the moment it's
Yeah, interesting. Sorry you ran into this, Christopher. But yeah, thank you for sharing your experience with the community and then also this policy as well for it. Now, is this policy is this something that's could be made applicable to like resources in general, or is it something that's specific to like
You can
key
see
to the
we have
KMS?
a match. We have a match in this resource at the moment. KMS AWS Crossplane IO, and you can disable the match and can have it for all resources if you want.
Oh, this one here.
We're doing this for the keys because we saw that the keys. So we needed this to stop the generation of the keys in the production, to start removing the keys, you know, and fixing the composition things and roll all the things out. So we started to match only the keys, but we can do it also for other resources.
Got it.
Yeah.
And Nick, is there, if in your perspective, is there something like, you know, fundamental in Crossplane runtime that should be enforcing this type of behavior of, you know, like external name not changing once it's set and keeping it you know, uneditable? Does that make sense, or is that something that is not in scope, or, you know, there's scenarios that you wouldn't want that to enforce that behavior in the runtime?
I don't think it's possible for Crossplane runtime a controller to enforce this. So we would presumably need an admission control webhook or something like that, which is effectively what Caverno is doing here. So the question then is more, do we want to build our own webhook, or do we want to just be like, use Caverno for this?
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, interesting situation, and this is definitely helpful to I really definitely appreciate, Chris, for you sharing this with the community, so that, you know, to raise awareness of it and help people at least understand this behavior and have a solution for it.
Yep.
Awesome, Chris. Okay, and then I think this is the last one in the set here of issues that folks want to talk about. Let's see. So I know this has been talked about a little bit before. Let's just see real quick what the latest is on this one. Bob, I think you've been driving this one. So do you want to kind of give a little bit more context and get us all caught up to speed on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of, as you said, there's been discussion of this in various different places. I know Provider Kubernetes and Provider Terraform have both had issues here. And the issue basically is that, you know, when you're deploying everything in one big composition, infrastructure plus the application workload, when you delete, the infrastructure just goes away, and there's no opportunity for the application workload to do any of its normal deletion handling, right? Your Helm charts can't run their pre and post delete hooks. Your Kubernetes objects can't even connect to the cluster anymore to do the deletion because the cluster's gone. And so, you know, I was trying to collect all of that in one place, hoping to get a little bit more discussion, but you know, and I know Yuri was looking at this a little bit as well in Provider Kubernetes context. But you know, what I've been thinking and hoping to get input from other folks is whether we could do something with cascaded forward deletion that Kubernetes already provides to kind of synchronize or get a little bit of control over the deletion handling. You know, there's a whole lot of discussion there, and I'm not sure how much it really provides clarification. But I mean, I think there's kind of two different scenarios. There's a scenario where you've got all your infrastructure in one composition, you've got all your application workload stuff in another composition, and then those two compositions are combined together. And you really want the deletion of the application composition to happen first, and you know, kind of delay that deletion of the infrastructure until the application is gone cleanly. And so there's a couple of things I think we could do inside Crossplane to help facilitate that. One would be to delay the delete handling of the Crossplane resources until all the other finalizers are gone, right? So if somebody else, like Kubernetes, put a finalizer on the object and block forward deletion is set, you know, maybe block owner deletion is set, you know, can we delay calling the delete the external delete and the composite delete methods until all those other finalizers are gone, and we know that anybody else that was interested in this resource is gone, and now Crossplane can do its thing and delete. And that kind of combines with the owner reference issue. Right now, today, Crossplane enforces that it is the only owner reference that's allowed, which is understandable, right? I mean, Crossplane is the controller, it's the owner. It shouldn't allow anybody else to be the controller. But I'm wondering if we can ease that a little bit and just say, you know what, nobody else can be the controller, but if somebody else wants to be on here as an owner reference to provide some of that dependency context, you know, that would be allowed.
I think that is the case. So in Kubernetes, a controller reference is a special kind of object reference, and there explicitly can only be one controller reference. That's a Kubernetes constraint.
Okay.
So the controller reference should always be the object that is the parent of a thing. So if we create a thing, we make ourselves the controller reference. But I'm not aware of, you know, if we're stopping other things from being a normal owner reference, that's not intentional.
Okay, yeah, because there's code in, I want to say Crossplane runtime, that basically says, you know, ensure that we are the only owner. It basically says what you just said, but it wipes out any existing owners.
Okay, that's
that
probably
point,
a bug rather than intentional. It should definitely, we want to make sure we're the controller, but I would expect us to be leaving other owners alone.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I can open an issue on that. I'm just basically kind of looking for some guidance here. Do we want to, you know, do you want me to open an issue with a proposal and say, this is how I think it should work? You know, obviously we can address the owner reference issue as a separate thing, and that would be awesome. I'm just thinking that if we can get some of these things, you know, kind of figured out, then it really opens up the possibility of doing things like Kyverno policies that can automatically figure out your dependencies and apply them for you, right? I can think it'd be pretty easy to set up a Kyverno policy that says, for this Kubernetes object, go find the cluster that it's being deployed into and set up that dependency, right? And then if we combine all of that with Kubernetes forward cascaded deletion, then we can kind of get some control over this without actually having to do a lot of manual work, right? Because we don't want to manually track these dependencies any more than we have to. You know, I don't mind manually tracking the application composition dependency on the cluster dependency, but you know, I just think if we can get maybe the owner reference stuff fixed and take a look at the finalizer handling, maybe we can do, you know, maybe we can offload some of this delete handling stuff to Kubernetes and let Kubernetes worry about it.
Yeah, I think totally open to, I think the answer is yes to, you know, opening a one pager of design, start looking to this. I would say the reason that we haven't historically had much forward progress on this is that while I agree that, you know, especially for cascading deletion and whatnot, we want that to work. We have built some special use cases where, for instance, we have all the provider config usage things that all basically make sure that you can't delete a provider config that's still in use, because we have such a big mesh of things reference. You know, you have your claim and your XR, and then your compose resources, but then the compose resources can all depend on other things, as you know, cross resource references and whatnot. What we've historically been very hesitant to do is just get to a point where we have a whole DAG in the same way that, you know, Terraform does, where you can get just stuck graphs and you've got to compute a whole bunch of stuff to make anything work. So we have a strong bias for we think it's idiomatic in Kubernetes to just be eventually consistent. So wherever possible, we would, you know, we would like to just be like, delete all this bundle of stuff and just, you know, let the cloud providers work it out, sort of thing. But then, when, as you point out, if you've got, you know, the quintessential example being like a bunch of Helm charts deployed to a Kubernetes cluster, and you delete them all, the Kubernetes cluster goes away, then you can't delete the Helm charts because the cluster's not there anymore. So definitely, you know, definitely we should have a discussion about fixing this, and I definitely would love to see a one pager. I think it's just gonna be a case of like, can we find an elegant solution to it, sort of thing, that doesn't you know, have sort of unwanted side effects on Crossplane.
Yeah, I mean, from one perspective, deleting the Helm charts and even the Kubernetes objects and the Terraform workspaces, right? I mean, who cares? The stuff is gone, right? But there's just no way for the provider to know that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think if we can get some of the references and let Kubernetes do its thing, that would take a lot of the onus off of Crossplane and just let Kubernetes figure it out. So.
I had thought in the past, didn't we make a change that basically if the provider config was gone, like if you delete the cluster and the provider config that sort of points to that cluster goes away, like the provider config for Helm or Kubernetes, I thought that we had logic that was just like, oh, there's no provider config anymore, and you asked me to delete it, so I'll just assume that it's gone.
I'm not sure you can delete the provider config while there's provider config usages. I think might be the issue.
Yeah, good point. Right. So yeah, I could imagine attempting to solve this through some kind of clever logic that like figured out the likelihood that the provider config was pointing, the provider config can't connect to the underlying cloud anymore, sort of thing. For with a 404 or something like that, like this doesn't exist, then maybe we could be like, oh, as opposed to an authentication issue or something like that, and you're asking for the thing to be deleted, then maybe we could just assume there's nothing we could do and just let the managed resources get deleted, because as you say, the external resources, the things that were running on the cluster in that case have already been deleted. But that's only kind of the Helm or provider Kubernetes use case. I haven't looked into the provider Terraform one, for example.
Okay, that's great. I'll open an issue on the owner reference thing, and I'll put together a one-pager for the design. Thank you.
Yeah, Bob, that's great to kind of separate them out that way of, if there's one owner reference like bug, like tracking that with a certain issue, maybe that could be more targeted thing. And then this longer term, like more challenging, bigger scoped item there, the one pager it's a good way to separate those two. Yeah. All right. Okay, let's see here. Looks like.
Yeah, I added one last thing for the jet providers. More like.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just accept this first, and then we can adjust a little. This is a brand new topic, Christopher.
Yeah, I saw this in our setup a few times, and today I had a discussion in the community with Andrei Kozlovsky, I guess, and he found the same issue in the jet provider. So that's why we're creating together the issue.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to
Yeah,
got stuck on the formatting. Sorry.
Yeah, I tried it also, and this was not.
Okay, there we go.
Good.
Sweet, I'm back. I'm sorry. I can't do anything else until the formatting was fixed. So yeah, okay, let's open this up and let's check it out. All right, let's go.
Okay, I can have a short overview about this issue. So for example, if you create, we found out 2 resources at the moment, but I guess there are more. So for example, if you create a security group rule or a Fargate profile, directly after the creating, it is created in AWS, and the first observe says, okay, the resource is creating and the resource is ready, true, everything is great. But in the second observe loop, you see that the provider says something like, oh, sorry, but there's a duplicate security group rule or an already existing Fargate profile. And we checked a little bit in the provider how it looks like. And in the temp directory, the Terraform things are created under the hood. And if you scroll a little bit, we found out that the Terraform TF state looks empty, and only the Terraform TF state backup has the resource available. And if you are in this case, you never bring the resource as ready again. So you need to, I don't know what you can do. We tested to remove the resource from the provider and set it up again. And you see it every time, and you cannot remove everything from it. So you need to click in your AWS console and remove the things by hand, and that's everything you can do. And the question is if someone else sees something like this in the jet providers, or can guide us what we're doing wrong, or if this is a general issue under the hood. I don't know.
Yeah, does this reproduce 100% of the time, Christopher, or is it like a timing thing where it's?
Yeah, Yeah, we can reproduce it 100%.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I've seen this particular flavor of issue.
Because I
pop up
guess the
before.
provider sees that the resource is there, so we have no idea why we get the issue that this is duplicate or already existing, because this would be the true case that the resource is already existing.
That's true. That's totally fair.
But
Yeah,
I guess
okay, so yes,
it's a little bit under the hood, because if you see a true ready resource, then the TF state file is not empty like this one we see here for this resources.
yeah, exactly. It looks like something is going awry with like the bookkeeping and management of the state of the resources locally. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for this one, but yeah, it looks like it's a very fresh issue, and
Yeah, no
hopefully
problem.
look into it soon.
Wanted to mention this because at the end, if you're doing something like this in a wide scale, yeah, you create security group rules in a lot of AWS accounts, for example, then you can sort of you have a lot of things to do by hand to clean it up.
Yeah, clean up. Yeah, that's fair. All right, cool. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up too, Christopher. All right, so that's everything that's been added to the agenda documents. Are there any other topics that folks want to bring up then before we adjourn? All right then, cool. Well, good to see everybody. Thanks for joining, and thanks for all the collaboration and participation here. So yeah, good to see everybody, and we'll see you all on Slack until 2 weeks from now.
Thank you.
Cool. Bye.
Good to see everybody. Bye.